A few days after the terrible killings, the fear began to fade. Some animals remembered, or thought they remembered, that the sixth commandment said, "No animal shall kill any other animal." They didn't say it aloud near the pigs or dogs, but they felt that something was wrong. Clover asked Benjamin to read the commandment. He refused, as always, so she called Muriel. But now they saw that the commandment had not been broken because the animals who were killed had betrayed them. That year, the animals worked harder than ever before. They had to rebuild the windmill with stronger walls and still do all their regular farm work. Sometimes they worked longer and ate no better than in Jones's time. On Sundays, Squealer read long lists of numbers from a paper, saying food production had increased by 200, 300, or even 500%. The animals believed him because they couldn't remember how things were before. But sometimes they wished for more food and fewer numbers. Now all orders came from Squealer or the other pigs. Napoleon was rarely seen. When he came out, a black rooster walked in front of him and crowed before he spoke. In the house, Napoleon lived alone, ate alone, and used the fine china plates from the cupboard. Every year, a gun was fired on his birthday and 2 other special days. No one called him just Napoleon anymore. He was always our leader. Comrade Napoleon. The pigs gave him names like Father of all animals and Friend of ducklings. In speeches, Squealer cried and talked about Napoleon's wisdom and love for all animals, even those still suffering on other farms. Every success was credited to him, which was composed by Minimus and which ran as follows: Friend of the fatherless, Fountain of happiness, Lord of the swill bucket. Oh, how my soul is on fire when I gaze at thy calm and commanding eye, like the sun in the sky. Comrade Napoleon, thou art the giver of all that thy creatures love, full belly twice a day, clean straw to roll upon, every beast, great or small, sleeps at peace in his stall. Thou watchest over all, Comrade Napoleon. Had I a sucking pig, ere he had grown as big even as a pint bottle or as a rolling pin, he should have learned to be faithful and true to thee. Yes, his first squeak should be Comrade Napoleon. Napoleon liked the poem and had it painted on the wall of the big barn on the opposite side from the 7 commandments. Above it was a picture of Napoleon, shown from the side, painted by Squealer in white. At the same time, Napoleon was working through Whinper to make deals with Frederick and Pilkington about the pile of wood that still hadn't been sold. Frederick really wanted it, but didn't want to pay a fair price. Rumors were also growing that Frederick and his men were planning to attack Animal Farm and destroy the windmill, which made Frederick very jealous. Snowball was said to be hiding on Pinchfield Farm. In the middle of the summer, 3 hens confessed they had planned to kill Napoleon after being influenced by Snowball. They were executed at once, and new security measures were taken. 4 dogs guarded Napoleon's bed, and a pig named Pink Eye tested all his food in case it was poisoned. Later, it was said that Napoleon had decided to sell the wood to Pilkington and to trade products with Foxwood. Although the animals didn't trust Pilkington because he was human, they liked him better than Frederick, whom they feared and hated. As the windmill neared completion, rumors of a surprise attack by Frederick grew stronger. People said he had bribed the police and planned to come with 20 armed men to take the farms. Papers. Terrible stories were heard about Frederick. He beat an old horse to death, starved his cows, killed a dog in a furnace, and forced roosters to fight with blades tied to their legs. The animals were furious and wanted to attack Pinchfield, but Squealer told them to be patient and trust Napoleon's plan. Still, hatred for Frederick increased. One Sunday, Napoleon told the animals he had never planned to sell the wood to Frederick and would never deal with such a criminal. The pigeons were told not to go near Foxwood and to change their message from death to humanity to death to Frederick. Another of Snowball's evil plans was revealed. The wheat field was full of weeds, and it was said that Snowball had secretly mixed weed seeds into the corn. A goose involved in the plan confessed to Squealer and then poisoned itself by eating deadly berries. The animals also learned that Snowball had never really won the medal Animal Hero First Class. That had been a lie started by Snowball himself. In fact, he had been punished for being a coward. Some animals were confused, but Squealer quickly made them believe their memories were wrong. In the autumn, after a lot of hard work, the windmill was finally finished, even though they also had to harvest the crops at the same time. The machines were not installed yet, but the building was done, with walls twice as thick as before. Despite their tiredness, the animals walked around the windmill proudly, thinking about how hard they had worked and how great their lives would be when the windmill started working. They forgot their tiredness and danced around it, shouting with joy. He congratulated the animals and announced that it would be called Napoleon Mill. The animals were called to the barn for a special meeting. They were shocked when Napoleon said he had sold the timber to Frederick. Frederick's wagons would come the next day to take it away. All this time, while pretending to be friendly with Pilkington, Napoleon had secretly been dealing with Frederick. Relations with Foxwood were completely ended, and Napoleon had sent rude messages to Pilkington. And that stories about Frederick's cruelty were false or exaggerated, probably made up by Snowball and his spies. It was now said that Snowball was not on Pinchfield, but living a rich life at Foxwood, supported by Pilkington. The pigs were thrilled by how clever Napoleon was. By pretending to be friends with Pilkington, he made Frederick raise his price by £12. Squealer said Napoleon was so smart because he didn't trust anyone. Frederick had wanted to pay with a check, a piece of paper with a promise to pay later. But Napoleon demanded real money. Frederick had already paid in real £5 notes, just enough to buy the windmill machinery. The timber was taken away quickly. When it was gone, Napoleon held another meeting. Lying on straw with medals on his chest and the money on a plate beside him, he let the animals walk past and look at the notes. Boxer sniffed at them, and they rustled in his breath. But 3 days later, there was panic. Whymper came racing on his bicycle and ran into the house. A loud roar came from Napoleon's room. The money was fake. Frederick had stolen the timber. Napoleon quickly gathered the animals and shouted that Frederick should be boiled alive when caught. He warned them that Frederick might attack soon. Guards were posted everywhere, and pigeons were sent to Foxwood with a friendly message to fix their broken relationship. The very next morning, the attack came. While the animals were eating breakfast, guards ran in saying that Frederick and his men had already entered through the gate. The animals rushed to fight, but this time it was not easy like the Battle of the Cowshed. There were 15 men with several guns, and they opened fire at once. The explosions and pain were too much. Even with Napoleon and Boxer trying to help, the animals had to run away. Many were injured. They hid in the farm buildings and looked out through holes. The big field and windmill were now in enemy hands. Even Napoleon seemed unsure of what to do. He walked back and forth, nervous. They looked toward Foxwood, hoping for help. Then the pigeons who had been sent returned, and one brought a note from Pilkington. It said only, "Serves you right." Meanwhile, Frederick and his men had stopped near the windmill. The animals were watching them, and they began to feel very worried. 2 of the men took out a crowbar and a sledgehammer. They were going to destroy the windmill. "Impossible!" shouted Napoleon. "We made the walls too thick for that. They could not break it even in a week. Be brave, comrades." But Benjamin was watching the men very carefully. The 2 men with the hammer and crowbar were making a hole at the bottom of the windmill. Benjamin slowly nodded his long nose as if he was not surprised. "I knew it," he said. Don't you see what they are doing? They will soon put blasting powder into that hole. The animals were very scared and waited quietly. It was too dangerous to leave the safety of the buildings. After a few minutes, the animals saw the men running in all directions. Then there was a very loud explosion. The pigeons flew into the sky, and all the animals, except Napoleon, lay flat on the ground and covered their faces. When they stood up again, a big black cloud was in the place where the windmill had been. Slowly, the wind moved the smoke away. The windmill was completely gone. When the animals saw the windmill was gone, they became angry and forgot their fear. The sadness they felt a moment ago changed into strong anger because of this terrible and mean act. They all shouted for revenge, and, without waiting for orders, they ran together towards the enemy. This time, they didn't stop for the bullets that flew through the air like hail. The battle was wild and cruel. The men fired many times, and when the animals got close, they hit them with sticks and kicked them with their boots. 1 cow, 3 sheep, and 2 geese died, and almost all the animals were hurt. Even Napoleon, who stayed in the back and gave orders, got the end of his tail hurt by a bullet. But the men were also hurt. 3 men had their heads broken by Boxer's strong hooves. A cow hurt 1 man badly with her horn, and another man almost lost his trousers when Jessie and Bluebell bit them. Suddenly, Napoleon's 9 dogs came from the side of the field, barking loudly. They surprised the men, who now saw they might be trapped. Frederick shouted to his men to run away quickly. In the next moment, the enemy was running as fast as they could. The animals chased them to the end of the field and kicked them as they escaped through the thorn bushes. They had won the fight, but they were tired and covered in blood. Slowly, they started walking back to the farm. When they saw their dead friends lying on the grass, some of them began to cry. They stopped for a moment in silence and sadness at the place where the windmill had stood. Yes, the windmill was gone. Almost all of their hard work had been destroyed. Even the foundation was partly broken. This time, they couldn't use the old stones to build it again, like they did before. This time, the stones had disappeared. The explosion had thrown the stones hundreds of meters away. It was as if the windmill had never existed. As they came near the farm, Squealer, who had strangely not been there during the battle, came running happily toward them, waving his tail and smiling. Then the animals heard the loud sound of a gun from the direction of the farm buildings. "Why is that gun firing?" asked Boxer. "To celebrate our victory," Squealer shouted. "What victory?" asked Boxer. His knees were bleeding, he had lost a shoe, his hoof was cracked, and many pellets were stuck in his leg. "What victory, comrade?" "We pushed the enemy off our land, this holy land of Animal Farm," said Squealer. "But they destroyed the windmill." "We worked on it for 2 years," Boxer said. "It doesn't matter. We will build another one. We will build 6 windmills if we want to. You don't understand, comrade, how great this is. The enemy had taken this land, and now, thanks to Comrade Napoleon, we have won it all back. So we have only taken back what we already had," Boxer said. "That is our victory." Squealer replied. They walked into the yard, limping. The pellets in Boxer's leg hurt badly. He thought about the hard work of building the windmill again, and he started to prepare himself for it. But for the first time, he thought that he was 11 years old now, and maybe his strong body wasn't as strong as before. But when the animals saw the green flag waving and heard the gun being fired again, 7 times in total, and heard Napoleon's speech praising their bravery, they started to believe that they had truly won a great victory. The animals that died in the battle were given a serious funeral. Boxer and Clover pulled the cart, and Napoleon walked at the front. There were 2 days of celebrations, and time you working. There were songs, speeches, more gunshots, and each animal received a special gift: an apple for every animal, 2 ounces of corn for each bird, and 3 biscuits for each dog. It was announced that the fight would be called the Battle of the Windmill, and Napoleon had made a new award called the Order of the Green Banner, which he gave to himself. In all the excitement, the problem with the fake banknotes was forgotten. A few days later, the pigs found a box of whiskey in the farmhouse cellar that no one had noticed before. That night, there was loud singing from the farmhouse, and surprisingly, parts of the song Beasts of England could be heard. Around 9030, Napoleon was clearly seen wearing Mr. Jones's old hat, running quickly around the yard and then going back inside. But the next morning, the farmhouse was very quiet. No pigs were seen. Around 9 o'clock, Squealer came out. He walked slowly, looking very tired and sick. His eyes were dull and his tail hung down. He looked very ill. He called the animals and said he had very bad news. Comrade Napoleon was dying. The animals cried sadly. Straw was put outside the farmhouse doors, and they walked quietly. With tears in their eyes, they asked what would happen if their leader died. A rumor spread that Snowball had finally managed to poison Napoleon's food. At 11 o'clock, Squealer came out again with more news. Comrade Napoleon's last order was this: from now on, drinking alcohol would be punished by death. By the evening, Napoleon seemed to feel a little better, and the next morning Squealer told the animals that he was getting well. That evening, Napoleon returned to work, and the day after that, the animals learned that he had asked Mr. Whymper to buy some small books in Willingdon about how to make alcohol. 1 week later, Napoleon gave an order that the small field near the orchard, which was originally meant for animals too old to work, should be plowed. It was said that the grass there had become weak and needed new seeds. But soon the animals found out that Napoleon wanted to plant barley there. Around this time, something strange happened that no one could understand. One night around midnight, there was a loud crash in the yard. The animals ran out of their sleeping places. The moon was shining, and they saw a ladder broken in 2 near the back wall of the big barn, the wall where the 7 commandments were written. Squealer was lying on the ground next to the broken ladder, looking dizzy. A lantern, a paintbrush, and a pot of white paint had fallen beside him. The dogs quickly formed a circle around him and took him back to the farmhouse once he could walk again. None of the animals could understand what had happened, except for old Benjamin. He nodded his long nose as if he knew something but didn't say a word. A few days later, Muriel was reading the 7 commandments out loud to herself. She noticed something surprising. The animals had always remembered the 5th commandment as, "No animal shall drink alcohol," but they had forgotten 2 words. The commandment now said, "No animal shall drink alcohol to excess."